Amberglen's fishing club has been active for many years and has just been newly stocked with tilapia fish. Scotty Burge will provide details about the club, and Neville Futter will share some insight and information about the tilapia and how to catch them.
Are any of you wanting to go? You're all happy to stay? Because I probably see in front of me more people here than we have members, and I think that's a good place to start when the Adidas shut up. Are you catching the Adidas on? Probably 3 or 4 years ago we had 60 members, and because of the deterioration in membership and the fact that we've tried to maintain our subs per annum at a level of 100 Rand, which has been going at the same figure for as long as I've been here. The history of the fishing club initially started off as a fly fishing club. Because of the shortage in cash, we had to stop buying trout, and we came up with this idea of substituting the trout with the tilapia. And fortunately, Neville Futter has had a lot of experience with tilapia, and you'll find his talk is going to be most interesting on tilapia themselves. We'll do a short little clinic on how to make up a trace. He'll tell us all about the Tilapia Mozambique, which is the one we put in here, and also the fact that he and Justin, per kind favour of the office here, lent us their bakkie, and they went up to Matukulu, where this tilapia farm is, and fetched the fish for us. The trout were costing us, landed here, about 130 to 140 Rand a kg. That was clearly unaffordable for us to continue. Neville managed to get us a price on the tilapia of 30 Rand a kg. So as a result, instead of getting the normal 100 plus fish, we managed to get 600 fish. Tilapia, I understood, were easier to catch. We had to go the other day and they weren't. But like any fishing, you must persevere and you will catch them. We eventually caught 2, and Neville caught 1. So it is much easier to fish for tilapia than bass or trout, which means that older people, like most of us, grandchildren, a lot more people will be able to participate in the fishing. Whereas in the past, particularly with the trout, generally only the people who could trout fish would catch trout, the others had to sit and watch. So, Neville, if you can just come and start your little spiel.
Okay, good afternoon all. It's befallen to me to try and help out the sort of gradation from trout across to tilapia. So I thought what I would do is spend about 5 minutes just explaining the environmental issue of tilapia, where they come from, how they live, and what their habits are, which will in turn translate into how you go about fishing for them. Tilapia is very, very old fish. For those that know the story of this rather clever caterer all those years ago, who fed I don't know how many thousands of people with 5 fish and 7 loaves, the fish were probably tilapia. Because they came out of the Sea of Galilee, and Oreochromis aureus, that's their home. So the so-called blue tilapia, or blue. So they've been around for many years. The Egyptians were farming them 4,000 years ago. That's all on the hieroglyphics. They are native to Africa and have spread more or less the whole world wide as an activity or as a result of man's activity, translocating them around to fish with them, to farm them and whatever. There are 4 natural species in South Africa. 2 of them are Oreochromis and 2 are tilapia. Oreochromis species are mouth brooders. They lay the eggs on the ground, they get fertilized, they pick them up in their mouths and hatch them. 96 to 105 hours later. It's a bit temperature dependent.
Sorry, that's the female?
That's the female. Some of them are maternal brooders, others are paternal brooders, and some are both. There's about 100 species worldwide, 4 in South Africa. Oreochromis mozambicus, which is what we've got here. Oreochromis placidus, which is quite a specialized one, lives in the Simongalisa wetlands. And then on the Highveld, there's Tilapia stolmanii, Flaykerper it's called, and Optodon or Coptodon, or the old Tilapia rendalia, redbreast. Mozambicus occurs from the Zambezi River mouth all the way around to the Bushman's River. And they're very adaptable. They can live in seawater and freshwater. A lot of them live in estuaries, and they go upstream and to breed and come back and live in the saline water. So it's a natural occurring fish that we've brought here. It's no ways that anybody can say that we're interfering with the environment or nature. Go on here.
Is that what we've got in the stand, the Mozambique?
We got the Mozambicus, yeah.
Is the yellowfish a tilapia?
No. Worldwide there's about 100 species, all originally from Africa. Today, tilapia is the second biggest farmed fish in the world, after carp, the bulk of which is farmed in China. In 2002, worldwide, less than 200,000 tons of tilapia were farmed. Last year it was 8 million tons. It's a 40-fold increase over 20 years. In other words, it's doubled every year. It's going to be the biggest farmed fish very soon, and it's now known internationally as the aquatic chicken. Okay, so that's sort of the basis of tilapia.
So just one question, are all tilapia happy in salt water and fresh water?
No.
Or just
No. It's just the ones that live along the coastlines, basically. Mozambique has been one of them. Now, tilapia they're a food fish for people. Anywhere north of South Africa, going north into Africa, everywhere, it's a staple diet. Funny enough, south from down, it's hardly known. Apart from parts of Zululand and Limpopo down near the Kruger Park, a lot of people there fish for them and eat them. But the rest of the locals just don't know them. I don't know why that is, but if you go north, every person eats tilapia. They're a food fish both for the human population and in the water. They're not exactly bottom feeders. In other words, they partially demersal. A demersal fish is one that lives flat on the floor. And proper demersal fish are like sole, halibut, rays. They're flat. They're heavier than water. And they don't have a swim bladder, so they can't control their buoyancy. So when a ray is flapping along through the water, that's fine. The moment it stops swimming, it sinks and it lies on the floor, and its eyes are on the top so it can see what's going on. And the same with a sole and a plaice. Sole has to keep swimming, otherwise it'll sink to the floor. Those are your demersal fish, the bottom feeders. Tilapia are the next sort of step up, if you like. They're called demerso pelagics. So they live sort of down there, not up here. So they're always in shallow water. So here, the tilapia in here will be living all the way around, or around the edge like this. You won't find them out there like you do the bass and the trout. The second reason why they're always here is the Mozambicus tilapia, and in fact most tilapias, are herbivores. They're herbivorous fish. They don't eat other fish. So they live on the vegetation. And there's no vegetation out in the middle, so they're always around the edge. So it's the next thing about fishing for tilapia is you fish in shallow water. Don't cast far out in the deep, you'll never see the fish. I don't think the fish has been born yet that doesn't eat a worm. So while I say they are herbivorous and live off sort of herbaceous matter, weeds, algae and so on, they will take a worm like any other fish. But they won't eat other fish.
Will they take a fly?
I doubt that these ones will. But certainly when you go further north onto the Zambezi, you fish for a thing called an embwe, which is Serranochromis robustus. They call it the African bass. When they get big ones, you can put a beer can in its mouth. They take meps, black furies or red tigers, yeah. And you trawls for them. These ones, I doubt it. But it'll be interesting to see how it goes. It depends also, you know, you must be careful in nature about saying yes and no about everything, or black and white. For example, when you get a start of the season and you get a storm and all the flying ants come out, these things go mad. And if the flying ants settle on the water, they come up and they take them. And then you would catch them with a fly, because they are so frenetic, they wouldn't know the difference between the flying ant and your fly. But I think as a rule, probably not these. But robbies, as they call them, robustus, yes, definitely.
It's worth a try.
Sure, it's always worth a try, yeah.
What size do they get to?
Mozambicans get to about 2.5 to 3 pounds over 2 years. And they're absolutely useless from a fish farming point of view. When I talked about the 8 million tons of tilapia that was farmed last year, about 99% of that are Niloticus, Nile tilapia, because they grow 40 or 50 times faster than all other tilapias, and you can get it to that size in 10 months. When we were farming them in Joburg, we got them from eggs. We had our own breeding, we hatched our own eggs. We got them from eggs to 700 grams in 10 months. But you won't do that with a Mozambicus. Yeah.
Sorry, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Will they eat the bass's eggs?
Yes, probably. I would say they probably will, yeah.
You know, the bass all coming right into these weeds here
Yeah.
and lay their eggs.
Which they're doing right now, yeah. They're spawning right now. They probably will, yeah. Certainly the bass...
Do you think it might have, how much do you think it will affect our bass?
I don't think it'll affect
Bass
it.
protect them.
Yeah, the bass will protect them. They fight them off.
Yeah, but if they're laying eggs,
No,
the eggs are not round.
But they don't abandon.
Yes, they
They
keep the eggs in one spot and a pair of bass circle it the whole time.
they guard the eggs.
Guard them, and
Okay,
when
now I
Yeah.
they guard them as well.
Yeah,
And can I ask you one other question? Eating them.
yeah.
Now, do you take the skin off like we do the bass? You know, we take the skin off the bass and then cut the fillets off. Or do you just cook them?
It's like whatever you want to do, you know. A lot of people eat them as the whole. A lot of people fillet them and then skin them. So you can do whatever you want. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Google it and you'll see that there's probably 50 different ways.
There's,
Recommended. It's like
I'm
anything.
just asking so we know the ones that I catch today.
You know, just to get back to your question on the bass. Initially, all bass were taken out of this dam. They tried to deplete this whole dam of bass so that the trout could thrive. They're doing the same thing, I believe, over at Amberglen, you were saying?
They've given up.
They've given up. You won't get rid of the bass.
never.
You won't get rid of them, thank goodness. Because what it's providing now, and it was part of our thought pattern on this thing, is that if we can provide fishing 12 months of the year for everyone, that's what we would like to do. We don't want to make it difficult for people to catch them. Hence this talk here, so that you understand what you're doing, and Neville will show you how to make the trace up. So you can still fish for bass.
These are all males. They've been what the term is sex reversed. Like
All the males at Amberglen.
so, yeah, like so many animals which are directly in lineage to the dinosaurs and all that, through the reptile chain. And today, a good example is crocodiles. Crocodiles will lay a nest of eggs, and then the environment determines whether those when they hatch, whether they're male or female. And the fish are exactly the same. So these fish were fed methyl testosterone in minute quantities in the first 21 days of their life after they hatched, and that pushes them all, about 96% of them, to males. Now the reason they do that from a commercial point of view for fish farming is you don't want the fish to breed in the tanks, and you want all male fish because they grow faster. It's an economic thing. But here Scotty took that route in case it doesn't work, in which case they will eventually all be fished out. But in future days, maybe we bring in a mixed population and let them breed.
So
That was going to be my question.
just to try and establish some sort of catch limit. With trout we had a catch limit, you could only take so many per week or per month. We would like to give these fish a chance to grow out, rather than take them all out in the first 6 weeks at the one size. What is the conversion ratio, well, not conversion, but
Their growth.
from 500 grams to 1 kg? How long?
Yeah, that's it's a bit like how long is a piece of string, because it depends so much on where they're living, what the temperatures are like, and what the food source is like, and all that.
Yeah.
But assuming all that sort of stuff is like, are equal, they should grow. The ones we brought down from Richards Bay was about half of them were 250 to 300 grams, and the other half were about 380 to 320 to just over 400. It's half and half. That is because that's what was available. We couldn't pick and choose. Now the bigger ones should grow across the summer, in other words to March, about between 1 and 2 grams a day. So that's 60 grams a month, 6 months, another 350 grams. So they should be 700 grams by end of the summer. Then they idle. As the temperatures drop, they just switch off. It's a cold-blooded animal, so as the temperatures drop, it adapts to that temperature, and eventually gets to the point where there's no more metabolism going on, and they'll just hide in the shallows until the water warms up again. So that's about August, September next year, and they'll carry on growing.
So is the catching of them much the same as bass? I mean, bass
No.
in the cold season you don't catch much, but
No.
do you catch them right through the?
You can catch them throughout the season, yeah. Obviously a slower rate in the winter than in the summer, but you can fish them throughout the year. Yeah.
Are they
Yeah, so-
really bony fish?
They are bony fish, yeah. It is a bony fish. When we farmed them, we fill it at we didn't fill it anything under 650 grams, and they've got 3 pin bones opposite the pectoral fins, and those you can pull out quite easily when you know what you're doing. So filleting is probably the best way to go, as long as you get those 3 pin bones out. 3 on either side, so there's 2 fillets per fish. So as long as you get the pin bones out, there's no more bones. If you eat it whole, it's exactly like eating a trout, and you get it's a nice juicy fish, neutral taste. If you pull it down from the backbone down, the meat will come off the bones. But it is bony, there's no doubt about it.
Sandy, I'm sure if you catch and when you catch, we'll be there to give you a hand with, how to deal with it. But just to get just to get a better understanding of what our strategy is going to be regarding the catch and release, is that the more you put back, the bigger the fish are going to be available for the next season. So by all means, take fish and try your recipes or your fish cakes or whatever you want to.
Yeah.
But I think just generally speaking, we would like to see them go back to grow into something for the following year.
Just with the handling of that fish, It's not as tender as trout.
Not at all. They've got heavy scales.
It's a very, very robust fish, especially the Niloticus, which is not here. Niloticus is an invasive species. You can't have them here. But they are almost like bass. In fact, the robustus up on the lake, they call it the African bass. Proper fish. These things are very docile and tough, very tough.
So just when is the best time to fish them? You know, our bass we find is early in the morning, and from now on until...
It's much the same as now. It looks perfect out there now. Looks perfect there now.
So the evening is the
Yeah,
best time, or the morning?
or early mornings, yeah. But as a kid, we used to catch them literally 24 hours a day. All during the day. We used to fish for them at night. We used to go camping, throw a line in, you catch them at midnight. So, anytime.
Yeah, they're not programmed, but it's like any fishing. The longer you have your line in the water, the more chance you've got of catching it. And we came here the other evening, and it was just boiling with them. I mean, they were all over the place. I saw Neville the next morning looking very forlorn walking up the hill. Come down the next morning, and it was dead. There was nothing.
Except, to be fair, I also had the wrong bait. but they weren't moving anyway.
What was the wrong bait?
I've tried this thing from the fishing shop in town. I can't remember what it's called, but it's actually yellow maize, soaked in pineapple juice and all sorts of other bloody rubbish.
Where is a shop to get the gear and that?
Victoria Street. There's a place called Kingfisher shop. Yeah.
Look, the Howick Motor Spears has quite a bit of stuff as well.
Oh, do they?
Yeah. That's
They're big fishermen.
yeah, they're tilapia fishing.
Yeah. Yeah, someone's...
Howick, where?
Howick Motor Spares, just down from the post office on that back road.
Oh, really?
Tilapia man.
Yeah.
Just now you mentioned that they would take a trout fly if they think it's an ant, a flying ant.
Yeah.
But what would you recommend as a bait?
Standard.
Bass, Leo?
No, Scotty caught one here on a tiny little lure the other day.
It was a fish, it was a tiny little fish.
Tiny little fish, plastic fish, which I found surprising.
But you forgot about the fishermen.
But by and large, the best without a doubt is the worm. But they will take other things. Because they are herbivores, if you just dig around and pull out some filamentous algae, greens and stuff like that, wrap it around the hook and throw it in, they'll take that. Breadcrumbs, also sourdough, anything like that. Yeah, bits of maize, all sorts of things.
Anything that will stick on the hook.
Correct, yeah, and it sort of looks like something that he sees from a distance. They'll come and have a look. And we'll talk about it in a minute, but the way you fish for them is totally different from fishing for a predator fish like bass or trout or tigerfish or whatever. It's a patience game. So we'll talk about that in a minute. You don't trawl for them, but you do move your bait. As you're sitting out there and for 5 minutes nothing's happening, just reel it in a bit and move it. Reel it a bit and move it. Or let the wind push the float, like that. But you're not constantly casting and retrieving and casting. No.
What about a green pea? I mean, it's a round thing. It's nice and...
Try it. I've never tried it, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Or a worm.
Yeah.
Use sweet corn, don't use the processed sweet corn. You need a hand with anything?
No, it's fine, thanks.
Okay, Neville's just going to show you what a typical rig looks like. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, okay. If you go back to what I said earlier on, it's almost a submersible fish. It lives at the bottom and it feeds at the bottom. But it's not a bottom feeder properly, like a mudsucker or but they feed just above the surface and against the bank. So you're going to want to be fishing always in shallow water. So what I've got here is a leader clip, which you leave on the line the whole time, and then with a snap swivel you can add or take off whatever you want. So I make up a whole lot of these, and then you just take it off there and change it. Or it's also got another lead clip there and a swivel, so you can take the float out and just fish from the bottom. We put that up to there. And also it's always useful to have a float that you can move and change the depth. And that's why those bubble floats, you know, it's 6 of one, half a dozen the other, but a pencil float will tell you if you got too much line below the float because the pencil is flat. You know that your bait is lying in the mud. So you pull it in, drop it down until the pencil stands up, and then you've got the float at about the right height. I mean the bait, the right height. Again, all just snapped together with leader clips and a couple of little split shots to give it some weight to cast out. So what I do is I make up, long gone are the days when you were a kid and you can sit next to your box and quickly change and put a new hook on and go out, because I can't even see it anymore. So what I do is I sit at a bench with a bright light and I put on all the swivels and the clips, and then I just sort of change the whole rig at each time. So I've got anything like maybe 10 or 20 at a time in there. Sometimes you can just take the float out and move it up, or change the whole rig and go out. But these are the types of rigs where you'll fish away from the bank and out to where the weeds are.
Those split shots, how far do you put them from the hook?
Like there's the hook, there's the split shot. Anywhere down here. Yeah.
Okay, 30 centimeters.
Yeah. So there's the hook and there's the split shot. Now these.
Can we get a shot of that close up? If we take those up to you, can you take a? Don't move it. I mean, on this, where people are going to look at it on Facebook. I'll take a photo of it. Yeah.
So now these fish live all the way in the shallows, all the way around, and they just love those lily pads, and they're always underneath there. So what you got to do is you throw it right out next to the lily pads and let it sink, and make sure that your pencil is up, or hopefully if you've got a bubble float, that you know, and then you just kind of patrol along the front of the lily pads, watching all the time, because they swim near the surface in schools. They are partially pelagic, so they swim in schools. And they're also food fish, so they live in groups. They're not predators on their own. So you'll see them swimming, and then you go for them there. Now,
Neville, so
yeah.
I understood clearly the pencil situation.
Yeah.
That you can tell when the float's
Yeah.
off the ground. But I didn't understand on the other.
You can't. With a bubble, you don't know. You actually don't know. Yeah. So that's
You can judge it.
But you can judge it.
If you feel you can judge it, then as Neville showed you, you can actually adjust this.
Yeah.
If you think you're fishing in deeper water,
You just
then you can move that.
you can.
About 200 millimeters that last bit.
Yeah.
200 millimeters.
Well, it's the depth that you're fishing at, yeah?
So we'll stick with the pencil. We'll stick with
Yeah.
the pencil.
Now, right. So there's two ways. There's essentially two ways you go for these fish. You go with that kind of rig, a float, lightly weighted, and a hook, and then you cast out and you watch from the surface down. I don't know. I don't want to sort of be quoted on this, but probably 50% of the people who fish for tilapia fish with that rig. The other 50% fish totally differently, and they.
Side hook, I see they're pretty small, but can you use the side hook?
Yeah, those are between a 4 or a 6. Okay.
They've got small mouths.
Yeah, they got small mouths. Yeah.
Got very hard lips.
Yeah, if you get him right inside and underneath into the palate, it's hard. But they have got what I think a fisherman calls a soft mouth. If you strike hard, you'll just pull it out. Okay. So the other half of the guys fish on the ground. They don't use a float rig at all.
Sometimes not even weight.
Sometimes not even weighted, yeah. But it's generally, I find you weight it because you need to cast quite far. So that's a rig now, again with a snap swivel, that you can just take this one off and swap it. That for that. Take the float off, and now you're fishing on the ground. And it's about 200 mils long. You can put any number of hooks on this along that bit. I generally put either one or two, and the weight's at the bottom. So when the weight hits the bottom, it's like that, and that's how you're fishing, just off the floor. Now you're reliant on a fairly tight line because you've got to feel him going for the bait. Whereas there you can watch the things on the surface. If you're fishing at the bottom, you've got to rely for him to tell you, tap tap, that he's now playing with your...
Could you still not use a float with that?
Well, essentially that's the same as this. If you want to go back to float, that's essentially the same thing.
But the float would be more indicative of the bite.
Well, yes, you could put a float on that. I mean, you could put this onto that rig if you wanted to, yeah.
You also regulate the depth that you want
Yeah.
to hook.
Now, being a sort of a group food type fish, they don't take a lure or a bait like a bass does, or a tiger or a trout. They play with it for a long time. Some people actually say they think this damn thing sucks the worm. I've never really understood that, but a lot of guys will tell you that. So it's a patience game. You've got to get it in and wait. And if you're fishing on the bottom without a hook, you're fishing with the rig here, you can feel him tap, 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 tap. But you've got to resist the temptation to just hit it. You've got to wait for him to pull, and then you hit it. It's the same with this. You'll see the float sort of popping around, moving a little bit, means he's down the bottom there, having a look at what you got. And you've got to resist the temptation to hit it, then wait for either the float to disappear or to start running along, and then you hit him. So those are essentially the sort of simpler ways you're going to fish for these things. There's no cast, retrieve, cast, retrieve. You cast and you fiddle with it a bit, pull it a bit, move it, don't like it, move to the next fishing site. But it's not like fishing for trout or bass. You're not trolling at all. It's like a stationary situation.
Neville, could you just perhaps thread one of the worms onto the hook so they can see the presentation of because of the very small size of the hook, you've actually got to wind it around there.
I think they would go for these plastic earthworms.
I've tried it many times. I've never got so much as a bite out of it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And the ordinary earthworm? They love them.
Yeah,
I love
I
them.
was fishing with them the other day when we caught. Yeah, you can use it. Yeah.
Oh, good on him.
Small. You know, for those of you who fish, you'll understand it. Very experienced fishermen can come here and fish all day and catch nothing. Some little latte can come down here with his grandfather and throw something in that looks like it was made up at play school and bang, into the fish. That's fishing. So you have to spend time in the water. And then when you get home and you've caught nothing, you can tell your big stories like this.
Scotty, does that mean that fishing on those sites over there, probably won't catch any tilapia?
No, well, if you throw it down where it's shallow. There is a bit of growth of weed over there.
Yeah.
If you throw where it's shallow, just don't throw in the deep water. It's no good throwing out where your ducks are.
So you won't find them in the middle of the dam.
No.
There or
This is ideal. And number 16. Those are the two best ones.
The water boils every morning in that bathroom. Every morning.
Really?
Will they have any effect on our wheat? Will they
Yeah.
affect the wheat?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Will they?
You know, it was one of the deciding factors was that they eat the weed. You know, for a long time people have been saying, why don't you put the grass carp in here? There were grass carp put in here. I believe there's still 2 big grass carp here. But in order to get enough grass carp here, you've got to be careful that you keep it balanced, because the weed produces the oxygen, produces the chain of life for the fish and the weed.
So that's what it looks like with a worm. It's only one worm. I normally put about 3 or 4 on there to get a clump, you know, to get a sort of a thing that big. But one is fine, like that. What was the other thing I was going to say?
Are you feeding the worm over the hook, or is it?
A bit of both. You feed the hook, the worm, right through the centre of the worm onto the hook, push it up, double up, and get a sort of a zigzag, then put him back on again. I think again, it's not a science; it's an art. A lot of guys will tell you they want the worm to be moving on the hook.
Okay.
I've never spoken to any fish about that, so I wouldn't know. Yeah. Yeah.
For so long.
But the big thing is in shallow water. When we had like 50 tons of fish in the tanks in Joburg, the tanks were never more than 1.2 meters deep. And we could have a tank the size of where we're sitting here, there'd be 10 tons of fish. You could almost walk on them, but the water was only that deep.
I'll tell you something else that's very interesting about these fish. When Neville and Justin went to fetch them, they had the selected fish in a tank. They lowered the level of the water so that they could get at the fish, and the fish was still very active. So they put a few drops of oil of clove into the water, and virtually
not a few drops.
Oh.
It's about that much oil of cloves in a bucket that big,
Okay, so
and they
put
just
oil of
threw it
clove
around.
and those fish virtually just go to sleep like that. You can pick them up, they stop moving. And then by the time they got here, they'd revived, and they were, you know, the old toothache thing, when you were lighter, you put iodine or cloves.
Mm.
Can you still catch bass in this dam?
Yes.
Yes,
It would be a totally different way of fishing.
completely different.
Well, you can continue fishing for your bass like you did in the past. This gentleman caught 2 the other day. Nice sized bass over here.
A very interesting update, thanks to Scotty Burge and Neville Futter. Tight lines to all the fishermen, we are coming for supper.